On February 25, 1957, at around 6 o'clock p.m., a gentle snowfall covered Susquehanna Road in Philadelphia. A man, absorbed in his thoughts, walked slowly along the roadside, completely unaware of the discovery he was about to make. Suddenly, his foot struck something solid, a large cardboard box partially hidden among scattered trash in a roadside dumping ground. Curious yet uneasy, he knelt beside the box and slowly opened the flaps, recoiling in horror as he realized what lay inside. The lifeless body of a young boy, pale and motionless, covered in a blanket, stared back at him from the darkness of the box. Heart racing and hands trembling, he quickly grabbed his phone and dialed the police, his voice shaking with panic. As the sound of approaching sirens filled the air, the man stood frozen, unaware that the discovery he had just made wasn't simply tragic. It was the chilling start of a mystery that would soon become one of America's darkest mysteries, puzzling investigators and remain hauntingly unsolved for decades. Within minutes, the quiet street erupted into chaos. Multiple police cars skidded to a halt at the scene, their bright lights cutting through the darkness. Officers emerged quickly, faces grim with urgency, as they began setting up barriers and waving away curious bystanders whose whispers filled the cold air with speculation. Moments later, a specialized forensic unit arrived, stepping carefully through the freshly fallen snow towards the roadside dumping ground. Each member of the team moved deliberately, scanning the surroundings and meticulously documenting every detail. Cameras flashed continuously, capturing images of the scattered debris, footprints in the snow, and most importantly, the large cardboard box that held their grim discovery. With great care, they approached the box. The team carefully examined the young boy inside, noting his unnaturally pale complexion and visible bruising. His hair had clearly been cut hastily, uneven strands scattered around his small body. They documented signs of severe malnourishment, making notes that deepened the already unsettling nature of the scene. The investigators worked silently, communicating with brief, tense gestures as they carefully lifted the boy from the cardboard box, their movements gentle and respectful. The small body was placed carefully onto a stretcher and covered with a white blanket, shielding the heartbreaking sight from prying eyes. As the stretcher was slowly loaded into the medical van, the ambulance door closes. Detectives lingered by the box, now hauntingly empty. Their expressions betrayed the gravity of the situation. But the boy they had just taken away wasn't just another victim. He was the beginning of a dark mystery, one that would grip the nation. The investigators knew their toughest question was yet unanswered. Who was this boy, and why was he left to die alone in a box? As the boy's body was stored in the morgue freezer, the forensic team and detectives regrouped at the station. They didn't know who he was, how he died, or why he was dumped on the side of the desolate road. But they had to start somewhere. And so, they began with what they did have: a box, a blanket, and a body. The cardboard box was their first lead. The detectives carefully examined the label and found a serial number printed on the bottom. That serial number led them to a J.C. Penney department store, located 15 miles away. The box had originally been used to ship a baby bassinet. Investigators worked quickly to uncover how many of that specific model have been sold. The store confirmed that only 12 such boxes had been shipped, and every single one of them had been paid for in cash. No names, no addresses. The police released details to the public, hoping someone would come forward, and 8 of those 12 customers did. Each confirmed they either still had their box at home or had long discarded it. That narrowed things down, but not far enough. The remaining 4 purchasers were never identified, and any connection to the boy remained elusive. Then came the blanket. The child had been wrapped in a thin, cheap imitation Native American-style blanket. The fabric looked mass-produced, but investigators were determined to track it. They turned the blanket over to the Philadelphia Textile Institute for analysis. After studying the weave, the dyes, and the texture, the institute concluded it was likely manufactured either in Swannanoa, North Carolina, or Granby, Quebec, Canada. However, it was part of a bulk run. Thousands of identical blankets had been sold across the US and Canada, cheap, common, and completely untraceable beyond the factory doors. Another frustrating dead end. Next, they focused on the boy himself. The autopsy revealed he was between 4 and 6 years old, just over 3 feet tall, and weighed only 30 pounds. Shockingly underweight for his height and age, the forensic team documented signs of chronic malnourishment. His ribs protruded, his cheeks were sunken. He hadn't just been starved, he'd been wasting away for some time. And yet, that's where the contradictions began. This child, so clearly neglected, had signs of medical care. He bore 3 surgical scars, one on the chest, one near the groin, and one on the left ankle. The scars were neat and clean, almost certainly made by a trained medical professional. What kind of environment leaves a boy starving, yet gives him surgery? Then there were the more chilling discoveries. His nails had been freshly trimmed, his hair had been cut, sloppily and in a rush. Strands of it were still clinging to his body and the inside of the box. Forensic investigators noted that the boy's palms and feet were wrinkled as if they had been submerged in water. Was this part of an attempted cleaning, or something far darker? The official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, but the exact circumstances, how, when, and by whom, remained a mystery. Still, the detectives pressed on. Roughly 15 feet from where the box had been discovered, an officer spotted something small lying in the grass. A child-sized hat. It was a blue corduroy Ivy League-style cap with a brown leather strap across the back. Inside, stitched into the lining, was a label, Eagle Hat and Cap Company. It was a Philadelphia-based store. Police traced the hat to a small shop in South Philadelphia, run by a woman named Hannah Robbins. When shown the cap, she immediately recognized it. She had only made a dozen of that specific style and remembered the man who had purchased this one. He was a blonde, between 26 and 30 years old, and had asked for a custom alteration. He wanted the leather strap added. He paid in cash and left. She never saw him again. It was the closest thing they had to a suspect. Detectives fanned out across the city, visiting over 100 stores, homes, and businesses with photos of the cap and sketches of the boy. But no one recognized either. Not the boy, not the man, not even the distinctive hat. The detectives were left with more questions than answers. Who was this man? Was he the boy's father? A guardian? A killer? Could this custom hat be the key to unraveling the mystery? The longer the boy remained unidentified, the more desperate the investigation became. For years, detectives combed through thousands of leads. None of them panned out. The public grew restless, and slowly, speculation turned to obsession, and theories began to spread like wildfire. Let's have a look at some of the theories. The foster home theory. It started with the house just a mile and a half from where the body had been dumped, a local foster home run by Arthur and Catherine Nicoletti. In the 1950s, the couple had taken in dozens of children, with anywhere from 5 to 25 kids under their care at any given time. The police investigated the home early on. They interviewed the residents. Every child was accounted for, but not everyone was convinced. Remington Bristow, the medical examiner who first performed the boy's autopsy, never let the case go. He spent decades chasing answers and eventually became obsessed with the foster home. He claimed the boy might have been the illegitimate child of Arthur's stepdaughter, Anna Mary. His theory: the boy died accidentally, and the family covered it up to avoid the scandal. To prove it, Bristow brought in a sidekick. Yes, a sidekick. The woman claimed to sense the presence of the boy at the foster home. Ridiculous? Maybe, but Bristow found more than just vibes. At a 1961 estate sale held at the Nicoletti home, he discovered something chilling. A bassinet eerily similar to the one that had been shipped in the J.C. Penney box. And, folded on a shelf, blankets that matched the one found with the boy. Coincidence? Or smoking gun? Bristow believed it was the key, but when the police revisited the home decades later, Anna Mary provided proof that her own son had died by electrocution in a tragic accident involving a coin-operated ride outside a store. Still, the whispers never stopped. Why was the bassinet there? Why were the blankets so similar? And why, years later, did Arthur Nicoletti marry Anna Mary, his own stepdaughter? The sold child theory. Another theory came from 2 authors, Lou Romano and Jim Hoffman. In the early 2000s, they followed a bizarre tip. A man claimed that decades later, his family had rented a room to someone who casually mentioned selling his child. It sounded insane, and yet, when the authors presented this information to the police, they took it seriously. They tracked down potential relatives. One man looked strikingly similar to the boy. A forensic expert even noted the similarity in ear structure and facial features. DNA was taken, hope soared. But when the results came back, the connection was ruled out. It was another dead end. Still, the possibility lingered. Could someone have really sold their own child in post-war America? Was the boy in the box a victim of underground child trafficking? No one could say for sure. Then came the most disturbing theory of all. In 2002, a psychiatrist in Cincinnati contacted the police. One of her patients, known only as M, had told her a horrifying story. The woman, now in her 50s, claimed that she was just 11 years old. Her abusive mother took her to a home and brought a young boy in exchange for an envelope full of cash. They called him Jonathan. According to M, the boy was kept in their basement, naked, silent, and locked inside a box. He slept on cold concrete, he used a floor drain as a toilet, he was never seen by guests. He was, as she described, a prisoner. M said her mother physically abused the boy, and one night, while trying to bathe him, he vomited baked beans onto the floor. Enraged, her mother slapped his head against the ground. He died instantly. Panicking, her mother forced M to help get rid of the body. They wrapped the boy in a blanket and drove to Susquehanna Road. Just as they were about to dump the body, a man pulled over, offering help. M stood in front of the car's license plate while her mother convinced the man to drive away. It matched too many details. The beans in his stomach, the haircut, the blanket, even the witness. Yes, a man had indeed reported seeing a woman and a teenager acting suspiciously by the roadside that very night. The police, however, dismissed the claim. Why? M had a history of mental illness. But here's the thing, M wasn't just making it up on the spot. Her psychiatrist confirmed that she told this story 13 years earlier. The details she knew hadn't been made public at the time. Some detectives, including Tom Augustine, one of the lead investigators, believed her story might be the most credible theory they had ever heard. But without hard evidence, it couldn't be proven. Theories, and still no justice. With each theory, the public grew more divided. Some believed the foster home theory had been quietly buried to protect powerful families. Others were convinced the sold child scenario was the tip of the darker, hidden world. And some couldn't shake Martha's voice, her pain, her conviction that she had helped carry a lifeless body into the woods on a cold winter night. Each theory was plausible. Each one could explain the mystery. And yet, none of them could be proven. The boy's grave, marked only as America's unknown child, remained untouched by truth. The years dragged on. The photos aged, the sketches faded, but the mystery did not. How close had investigators come? Were they just one clue away from solving the case? Had the killer walked free all along? Or worse, had the answers been right there, buried under layers of missed chances and ignored warnings? The decades passed, hope thinned. But in the quiet corners of the FBI archives and in the minds of a few determined investigators, something was still stirring. Because unknown children don't stay unknown forever, and in time, the silence would break. For 65 years, he was a ghost, a nameless boy, a cold case, a face frozen in time. Detectives came and went. Leads rose and collapsed. The trail went colder than the grave he was buried in. But in 2019, decades after the world stopped looking, someone looked again. This time, science answered. The boy's body was exhumed one final time. Modern DNA extraction, once impossible, was now just within reach. Through painstaking analysis and cross-referenced genealogical databases, investigators slowly began reconstructing the boy's family tree, one branch at a time. It led them to a distant relative, then another, then a name. Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born January 13, 1953. The coldest case in Philadelphia's history finally had a name. On December 8, 2022, the Philadelphia police held a press conference. Detectives, some now gray with age, stood before the world and did something no one thought possible. They gave the boy in the box his identity back. For 6 decades, he was America's unknown child. Today, at last, he had a name: Joseph Augustus Zarelli. The room fell silent. Officers choked back tears, journalists held their breath. And somehow, the wind blew gently over a gravestone that had waited too long. But the celebration was short-lived, because even though Joseph had a name, his killer did not. The police did not release the names of his parents. One of them, they said, may still be alive. They didn't reveal where Joseph had lived or how he died, or who had let it happen. What they did say was simple and haunting. Today, Joseph lies buried in Ivy Hill Cemetery, not as America's unknown child, but as Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He has a name, a birthday, a life.